Look at that. So I've been playing mime for the last minute and a half, apparently. You can't imagine. Those storms that we had moved through have done a number on our stuff. And so maybe we're put together a little bit by duct tape and baling wire. Anyway, welcome to Late Night Coffee Talk. And sorry about that technical malfunction there at the beginning. But you're here, we're here. Got coffee, taking a break. You know the drill. And tonight we're going to do a little something different in that I'm going to do something I haven't done in a while, which is we're going to have a guest. And it's a good one, and you're going to love it. But before I get to that and all the things that we've got to talk about over our cup of coffee tonight, for those just joining for the first time, I'm Daniel Miller, president of the Texas Nationalist movement, and this is Late Night Coffee Talk. It is that time where I take a break from what I'm doing. I grab yet another cup of coffee because there's still work to be done, but I do take a break and visit with you guys, take your questions, talk about whatever's on going on in the T&M, right? You guys drive this thing and we'll be here for the next hour, taking your questions, giving you answers, and talking about obviously some great developments since the last time that we were together. And so now this is the businessy part. This is where I remind you that if you have questions, submit them to that email address right there, right at the bottom, coffeetalk@thetnm.org. Also, because we are on YouTube, Facebook, and X, you can drop your questions in the chat, the thread, whatever it's called on whatever platform. Drop it in there. We'll be trying to keep up because normally it scrolls a bit like a slot machine, and we'll be able to try to pick some of them out and handle them time permitting. And it's going to be, I'm pretty sure I have a good idea what most of your questions are going to surround, because I've already seen some of the questions that have started coming in via email when we announced that we were doing this this morning. So already got you loaded for bear, but while we have time, I'm going to go ahead and bring on my special Coffee Talk co-host tonight, the inimitable Mr. Nate Smith. Hello, Mr. Smith.
Howdy, Daniel.
Production, from a production standpoint, I just kind of like the plain background. There we go. Much better. Oh, look, we match.
Hey, there we go. Was it too much coffee in the background? Was that the deal? Or is there such a thing as too much coffee?
It's very, very busy. Very busy in the background. I couldn't, my eyes, my poor pitiful eyes just couldn't take it anymore. Wow. Well, good to see you, my friend. And right on the heels of convention, and of course, great news last night. And let me just go ahead and tell you and all the volunteers that everyone that participated in the convention last week, just absolutely how proud I am of the job that you guys did. Y'all did a phenomenal job. And I don't think anyone out there could take the jam out of your donut on this one.
No, it's been a great week. A busy, tired week, I think, for all of us, but it's been a great week. I'm so excited and impressed with the work that all of our volunteers did at convention. And man, I'll tell you what, I'm not tired of seeing this shirt yet. And walking around convention all last week, and just every time you see a red shirt, I mean, it's Republican convention, there's a lot of red shirts there, but just turn around and see, oh, there's a TEXIT one, there's a TEXIT one, it was a great feeling. I enjoyed it immensely.
Yeah, I can imagine it was a bit of a swarm. There's no doubt about it. Well, let me do this as before we dive off into the meat of it. Let me just go ahead and remind everyone, get your questions sent in. But for those playing catch up, if you did not know, the T&M had a booth at the Republican convention, the Republican state convention, which is typically the largest political convention in the world. And of course, there's a tremendous amount of backstory there in relation to what happened with the petition, the TEXIT petition. Go reference previous podcasts and articles on the T&M news site if you need to catch up with that. But I'm sure most of you understand kind of the tussle that we had with the Republican Party. And frankly, there was some discussion about whether or not we even wanted to pay money to have a booth there. But we left it up to the will of our people and said, if you want us to have a presence there, you'll participate in a campaign to raise money to do it, because it's not cheap to do. But we ultimately knew that whether we had a booth there or not, that the TNM was going to have to be there, because they were our planks. The two planks that were on the platform were definitely going to be under assault. And so, it was, I think, strategically wise for us to be there. Wouldn't you agree, Nate?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we definitely had some challengers that made moves to take our planks off the platform. I imagine we'll get into that in a little bit, but they were a very small minority. They were the fringe that we're always accused of being. They were actually the fringe. But so it was a great thing for us to be there, and so many people were excited to see us there. I mean, just from elected representatives down to just everyday delegates that came from all over Texas, they were excited to be able to meet with the folks of the DNM, to have conversations, and to participate in this process with us. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm kind of sure. I'm pretty sure it's got to be pretty weird for people who either are opposed to us, see us get such a friendly and warm reception in a place that's supposed to be their turf. But I will tell you, it probably bolsters the spirits of a lot of our supporters that may be getting flack in their community, or may still be a little bit bashful because they don't know how their neighbors will perceive this. And there's nothing like being able to go to a place, being unapologetic, unabashedly unafraid, unashamed of letting your TEXIT flag fly, wearing the TNM colors and going out there repping the brand, and seeing the reception from people. It's a lot of people, poll numbers are just poll numbers, right? There's numbers on a screen or a sheet of paper. But it's something different when you see those poll numbers play out in real life, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it was, not everybody had the shirt that was a TNM supporter.
Mhm.
And so for those that were hesitant, because maybe they sat in a room at a county convention, or at their county GOP meeting, and they're like, man, I feel like I'm the only Texas supporter here because nobody's talking about this. I mean, not necessarily at conventions, but maybe their GOP meetings and stuff. And then they get to show up and see all these people that are pro Texit and go like, wait a second, I didn't know you were for this. I didn't know you were for this. The light bulbs just start going off, and you feel reaffirmed in your beliefs, because a lot of times people they just don't know what they don't know.
Right. Well, let me do this, because I want to move along down the road, and I want to play this because it'll give me a chance to fish out some of the questions that are coming in. But for those who don't know, they think the convention is just a couple of days, or maybe 3 days. But I'm sure a lot of people have seen some of the news or the information that came out about things that were happening in the days preceding the official convention. Why don't you kind of briefly explain what that is that takes place before the convention?
Yeah, real convention starts on Monday. So it's a full 6 days of convention, and it's quite an experience. And in fact, there was actually a little pre convention this year that we found out about, and I think everybody was surprised with, where they actually conducted a little bit of the pre meetings with Zoom, and we actually got our first victory in one of those pre meetings. But starting Monday, when you get to the convention, that's where all the temporary committees take place, and this is where the bulk of the things are handled. So they're going to go through the entire platform and all those resolutions that were submitted from the county SD conventions, and they're going to start working to assimilate those into the platform. Legislative priorities is going to meet, rule changes, and a number of these committees are all meeting to discuss what's going on. And so from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, anywhere from 8 a.m. to sometimes close to 11 p.m. at night, these committees are meeting. They're taking public testimony. They want to hear from the people on the issues. Now, a lot of them already have their minds made up, and they're doing a lot of work on it, but platform actually breaks out into subcommittees to try to address, because it's such a large animal to tackle. And I spent the majority of my time in the legislative priorities committee. But man, they were there and they had a lot to go through. There was a lot to do and a lot of testimony. So convention starts early, and let's face it, I got to give Platform some credit where credit is due. They did a really good job of publishing specific schedules for their subcommittees and exactly when public testimony was going to be heard. But in priorities, we were always finding out as we showed up at the scheduled, well, at the previously mentioned time of when public testimony was going to be, like, oh nope, it got delayed again. And so, it's kind of like getting on an airplane these days. You never know what time you're actually going to take off. And we experienced quite a bit of that.
Well, this is, and I want you to explain that because, really two favorite moments of mine from the convention, and we'll tackle the first one is, and I'm already seeing kudos in the chat. It was when our resolution made it to legislative priorities, which, explain to everyone just kind of briefly about, what that was as part of the overall strategy.
Yeah, so we, going into this convention, we have a little history. It's not the first time we've worked to get planks in the platform. In fact, we've been working on this for many years. One of my favorite moments in the TNM was actually the floor debate that we had back in 2016. That
guerrilla style, man.
It was. It was good to see Albert Castillo there this year too. He was with us on the floor last time, or back then. So that was a lot of fun. But that was really the start of what is today the state sovereignty plank. That's when we got that first foundation in, and they forced us back then to. We called the real question. We didn't just have a discussion on the floor about whether we should have a vote on TEXIT, but we actually had a discussion about whether or not the Republican Party supported it. And we saw tremendous support even back in 2016. So that resulted in these planks being in there. And we had a really, really strong platform in 2022, thanks to the work of some of our supporters that serve on those committees. A special shout out to Stephen Callis for the work that he did, but him and numerous others in the 2022 convention worked to bring us not one plank, but two, calling for a referendum on Texas independence. And what was really special about this is one of them, and the state sovereignty as a whole, which addresses nullification, which addresses that part we started out in 16, where the federal government has impaired the right of local self-government to the states, i.e. the perpetuity of the union depends upon us maintaining that right of local self-government. And so, that plank was in there and the last time, and it got amended to call for a referendum in 2022. And then we also saw the passage of the plank that we really wanted, which just put it super plain and dry. But we call on the legislature to, pass a referendum for Texas independence that states the state of Texas should reassert its status as an independent nation. And we want that to take place in 2023. So, it was very clear and had a very clear date on it. And so that's the history of where we're coming from. So this time our goal was to just maintain those two planks on the platform side. And the one tweak that we asked, and we passed resolutions out of dozens of counties. There were 33 that passed it as a legislative priority. But I think I don't have the exact number, between 40 and 50 we identified that just passed one of these other resolutions. So the other resolutions we had was leave 33 in, don't touch it, and leave 225 in and just remove the year from it and say the next general session. And so that was where we were standing on the platform side. But as you asked earlier about the legislative priority, we wanted to up the ante this year. We knew that the TNM people that were in the Republican Party really wanted to see this, not just to call for the referendum, but they wanted it to be a legislative priority for the party. And we saw that because 33 county SD conventions passed a resolution separate from the ones supporting the platform planks, specifically calling for this to be a legislative priority. And I tell you, there's a little bit of controversy around that.
Well, that's what we're going to get to, because hence springs forth my first favorite moment of the convention. Some of you have already seen it, but I think it bears watching again. It's Nate's testimony in front of the Legislative Priorities Committee. So Watch this.
Next is Nate Smith.
Thank you. I respectfully ask that this committee not behave like what we see out of Austin often. And please listen to your constituents and your delegates. 33 county SD conventions passed a call for a Texas independence referendum as a legislative priority. That is the most out of any county SD conventions. The platform committee listened. They not only put 2 planks back in, but their plank 199 in the temporary report says this should be a legislative priority. Please listen to your fellow committeemen. How many people in this room support TEXIT? Look behind you. We're not fringe. 139,000 Republican Texas primary voters signed a petition asking to put this on the ballot, and it was denied by this party. Please correct that wrong. Please respect the will of your Republican primary voters, and look at the language we're about to submit to you to amend one of the ones you've put countless hours in on. I appreciate your time, I appreciate your effort, and I hope you respect ours as well.
All right. Are there any questions? All right. Rick Briscoe. Hey, question. Rick.
Why is what you propose not treason?
Because there's nothing in the U.S. Constitution that prohibits a state from leaving the Union, and the Texas Constitutional Article 1, Section 1 and 2 both say that the perpetuity of the Union depends upon the right of local self-government unimpaired to all the states, and Texans have at all times the inalienable right to alter, reform, or abolish our government in such manner we think expedient.
All right. Any further questions?
Did you take the Pledge of Allegiance today?
Okay. You were not recognized for another question. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your time, and we'll now move on to Paul Roby.
That's one of my favorite moments.
Oh man, that was exciting.
You smashed it. I mean, and look, this is what people should expect. The opposition when they run up on us with some dumb nonsense. How is this not treason? Don't get me started.
Exactly. How is your entire platform not treason by that line of thought?
Yeah, I mean, it's so ridiculous. But I absolutely love that. I mean, it was just you smashed it, and ultimately, the Legislative Priorities Committee, headed by Scott Bowen, who, by the way, is the guy who prevented you guys from one of the people who prevented all of you from having the ability to vote on this in March. He and his buddy Rolando Garcia, both from the Houston area, both SREC members. They did what they do, and they hate TEXIT. And that wasn't the end of what they tried to do, right?
No, it wasn't. I will say this, though, that maybe they should consider moving to a different city, because apparently they don't know who their city was named after.
It's even worse than that. If you look at the Senate districts that they represent, they're hardcore R at the convention on the SREC. Maybe they should do a little work in their own backyard.
Yeah,
just saying.
I don't think they had a lot of vote allocation, if that's what you're referring to. They'd have a lot of delegate strength.
Almost spit coffee on my microphone. Please don't do that.
I mean, there was a row or two of chairs for them.
Yeah. Wow. Not enough for a dodgeball team. So, well, and so, that even though it did ultimately get shot down in legislative priorities in the Legislative Priorities Committee, we did get the 2 planks through the Permanent Platform Committee. And ultimately that report came up on the floor by a vote of the delegates. Now, I want to set the stage for everyone, because I don't want to skip this over. The members of the Legislative Priorities Report, or the Legislative Priorities Committee, filed that supported this being a legislative priority, filed a minority report. Why don't you go ahead and kind of explain that process to everyone so they understand what that is?
Yeah, this process, so it's something you'll find typically in Robert's Rules of Order, but it's also specifically listed in the rules of the Republican Party platform for conventions. And so the theory behind a minority report is that sometimes a chair does not rule fairly, or just in generally the committee members, when they break out into a committee, are concerned as to whether or not the committee had the best interest of the delegates in mind. And so, in order to have the opportunity to bring this before the full delegate body and let the full body of that's meeting have a say in it, there's an ability to file a minority report. Now, in the case of the Republican Party, it takes 20% of a committee, or in the case of our report, 7 signatures to sign off to say, hey, look, we disagree with the decision of either the chair or the committee, and we want to present this before the general body next to the committee report and give them a chance to reconsider it.
And that's exactly what happened. But I think a lot of people need to understand that it got that part as a legislative priority got voted down on the floor. But why don't you explain to everyone how that came about and the shenanigans that were pulled to ultimately kill it as a potential legislative priority for the party?
Yeah, there's a few interesting anomalies that came up as a part of this, and definitely some shenanigans as well, right? Obviously the committee wasn't happy about it being a legislative priority, and then I just got to say too, on the vote that the committee took, because we had it considered before the committee in effect 3 times. The second time was actually a move to suspend the rules to reconsider it. But the fact that they repeatedly, after, I think we had the most testimony of any issue, maybe pretty close with abortion. But all of our testimony was in favor. We had no opposing public testimony during those committees. And the fact those committees decided to reject the will of the delegates, the will of the testimony, and everything in there multiple times, I think it's worth pointing out and noting kind of the sentiment going into what happened. Now, here's the other thing that happened. I noticed right off the bat when we're looking through the schedule that the legislative priorities report was not listed on the actual printed schedule and program. And I thought that's pretty odd. Obviously, the permanent report that where this would come up. And so I thought that was kind of odd. And there were lots of scheduling challenges the whole time, because what really sets the stage for this was on the day before, on Thursday, we had our SD meetings where we break out by Senate district and do things like elect our SRECs and elect the permanent committee chair members. And then we also have, since this is a presidential election year, we have the congressional district meetings where we meet to vote on sending people to the national convention for the Republican Party. Federal is what they should call it, right? In our book, it's not a nation. So to send them on to there. But the challenges we noticed, and my district was not alone in this, but the speed at which the business was getting passed was very, very slow in all these SD caucuses. And I think there had been some voting rule changes as well that exacerbated that. And so, we saw on Thursday night, our SD caucus ran over not only the SD caucus time, but also the time allotted for the congressional district caucus on top of that, and then still kept going. And then the congressional district still had to meet after that. So when this was scheduled again for Friday morning, if we move in here, the SD caucuses had to continue their work that day. They had selected their permanent committees the day before, and they get there, they have to elect delegates or electors essentially to the I'm sorry, was not it. They had to elect their state Republican executive committee members, and they had to make their nominations for chair and vice chair, because that was going to be coming up on the floor later that day. And so, well, no surprise that on Friday that runs way over. They had allocated an hour and a half for lunch, and the next general session was supposed to start at 1:30. And guess what? A ton of SD meetings were still in. Almost everybody missed the lunch, from what I understand, unless you were a very, very small SD that happened to be able to count quickly by delegate count. Then they weren't present. And so it was the general assumption. I'm texting party officials. I'm texting our people who've been on committees. I said, is there any way they're going to start this meeting at 1:30, knowing all these SDs are still in their caucus meetings? And they're like, no, we're expecting delays. We're expecting delays. Guess what? They didn't delay. Guess what they decided to put first, since it wasn't in the program and they could put it wherever they wanted to in the agenda? The report of the legislative priorities. Now, let me give you a little more context too. Not only was it just the voting process that took delays in our Senate district caucuses, but it was also the political speeches and essentially the political advertisements. And we saw that again on Saturday when we get to talk about the platform voting, hours of speeches. So they easily could have, knowing that they barely had enough people representation from SDs in order to even have a quorum of any kind to start this meeting off on Friday, they could have easily loaded up with more political advertisements and speeches and waited until the delegates were there to discuss the report of the legislative priorities. Because it wasn't just our issue, too. If anybody wanted to have any input in any of the legislative priorities, making amendments and discussing all that, that needed to take place then. And so it really looked like an effort to disenfranchise the body of delegates that were there from having any sort of official say in the legislative priorities.
Well,
So
and
that is,
they knew they had to take up the minority report first.
yep,
right?
they had to. That you present the majority report and then you have to present the minority report before any other business can be done.
And ours was the only minority report for the Legislative Priorities Committee.
So we're there, and we barely have representation from 16 of the 31 Senate districts, just enough to call it. And even from within those, a lot of people had missed the lunch, and so they needed to eat because it was now 1:30. And so you had a tiny portion of the delegate body present in the convention hall. Lo and behold, that wasn't the only part of it. When they went to present our report too, one of the things you have to do is you have to be able to present the report, to talk about it. There's the minority report person presenting gets 10 minutes available to them to make their case, and then you have debate for and against. So in order to do that, you speak at microphones around the convention hall. Well, the first point of confusion is we talked to multiple parliamentarians prior to this who told us that the 10-minute time, some could be yielded to another person to help make the case. So Mike Jackson, who was the person who presented the report for us, and one of our excellent TNM members that sat on that legislative priority committees and helped us out throughout this process, he gave the basic presentation and then asked to yield his time to to Mac Duncan, actually, who ended up being able to speak for us later on in the platform section of things. And so, and he gave testimony during that as well. But they wouldn't let him yield his time to that. And so, that may have been an accurate ruling. I'm not sure what the rules of that stated, but nonetheless, unfortunately, we got bad intel possibly on that. And so we didn't get to make the case that we'd hoped to make as part of that 10-minute presentation. But that was only the beginning, because the parliamentarians and the people that had been trained to operate the microphones and there's a lighting system to tell you, is it an interrupting motion? Are you speaking for? Are you speaking against? Those sorts of things. None of that was present, and they got these 4 microphones there. So, it's utter chaos from the people that are in the convention hall. And, the chair doesn't know who to recognize. He can't figure out who's for, who's against. He's begging people to come up and run the lights for the mics. All this is going on while we're trying to give testimony. So he can't keep track of who's for and against because, well, they jumped the gun, and they should have done something else here in this time period. But clearly that was not the intention. So there was mass confusion of lots of interrupting motions, and the delegate body really did not know what they were voting on. They couldn't understand what was happening, and then that was a real challenge to it.
Right.
So great case was made. You had in favor, at least, you had Rolando Garcia speaking against it, acting as if this was a direct call to leave tomorrow, but that it would also take 20 years, because that was interesting. He changed his tune before to this could never happen to now it's just going to take too long to do it. It's a very, very interesting shift in argument strategy for him.
We should ask him, hey, if we could guarantee it could be done quicker than that, would you be on board?
Exactly. Of course, he's also the one that I believe got confused as to what on earth Texas leaving the federal government how it could possibly solve federal overreach.
Unbelievable.
I mean, it's the
Well, we could spend an hour on just how ridiculous he is, but I know that's not what everyone wants to hear. We'll save that.
No.
We'll save that for after. But needless to say,
So-
it got, because of the shenanigans, it went the minority report got shot down by the 27 delegates that were actually on the floor at the time.
Well, it was interesting because you saw a really close voice vote on it. Don't get me wrong, I don't think he called the voice vote the wrong way, but it was close. And so we were prepared and called for a division vote after that, which had another interrupting point of order or point of information between it. And when it came time for the division vote, people really had no clue what they were voting on. And we actually lost that by a substantial amount. But I talked to our T&M folks who did happen to make it there, and they turned around and asked everybody around them, and they said, "Do you know what you just voted on?" And they said, "No, what was that about? We have no idea. We just thought we were standing up." I mean,
They thought it was the 7th inning stretch.
I guess they thought we were standing up to sing some hymns or something on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
It was
Wow.
there was a lot of confusion by it. So I don't think either of those votes, I mean, both in the number of delegates that were there and the confusion going on, reflected the will of the body. And that's really sad that all that was put into play, that we couldn't get a a fair hearing, because that's all we were asking for the entire time. Put this for the delegate body, let them decide. Even to the committee, the previous testimony that I'd given before, the one you'd heard before, was put this in the top 15, because the delegates decide what the 8 legislative priorities are there. So this came out of the most counties. It's your responsibility as the committee to understand that this is what the delegates want. So you put it in the top 15, and if the delegates want to make it number 15, that's up to them. I personally don't believe that they would, but that was the committee's responsibility. And for all of them that really thought we didn't have a lot of opposition, I mean, that didn't think we had a lot of support, well, they shouldn't have been afraid to put it in the top 15. But somehow they still were afraid. It's almost like they knew there was a good chance of it ending up in the top 8.
Right. Well, let's fast forward on, because we've still got a lot of, we hadn't taken a single question. We'll get to it, but let's fast forward a bit. So makes it to the permanent platform committee, and the opposition strikes again. And again, this elicited my second favorite moment of the convention. So this is about a 6-minute clip, folks, so don't go anywhere. And it's boring to look at because they never put the camera on the people, but totally worth a listen.
Yes, Scott.
Scott Bowen, Senate District 6. I move that we amend plank number 20 to strike the language, "Texas retains the right to secede from the United States," through the end of the plank.
Is there a second? Second hearing it. Do you want to lay out your amendment?
Sure. Thank you.
Well, actually, first, there you go. Is that properly reflected on the screen?
That's correct.
Do you want to lay out your amendment?
Yes. We had a vote earlier today on including this in the legislative priorities. That was overwhelmingly rejected by this convention. I think it is time that we remove this from our platform also. We don't want to go through the next 2 years hearing about how it's in our platform, and so we have to support it, when every single time the SREC, the voters, this convention has a chance to vote on the issue of secession, they always vote no. It's time to take it out. And so I urge that we do that now. This is not something we stand for as a party.
Okay. Mike 4. Mike 4 against?
Mike 4.
Mike 4.
Mac Duncan,
Microphone.
SD3. I would like to speak against that.
Go ahead.
What is being suggested is actually contrary to the Texas Constitution. We have to follow the rule of law. That plank has been in our platform for quite some time. And a set of delegates last year in Houston as well voted on that plank with 89% approval. Why in the world would we want to change something that is in our Constitution and has been voted on overwhelmingly by the people. The reason that that is in there is because it is a protective device that was set in place for us by the founding fathers of Texas in our law and is in our platform because Republicans support the law. It is time for Texans to run Texas. And as we continue to allow efforts like this to whittle away your liberty, your freedom, you are going to find yourselves shackled in a federal system that will squeeze the life out of you. And that is what Crockett, Bowie, Travis, and all of the heroes at the Alamo stood against. It is time for us to have these people stop trying to tear down the law of our land. There is an element of freedom that runs through the blood of every Texan, and every Texan needs to stand for that. It is time to stand for that. It is time for us to ask, will you cross the line in the sand? It is time to do that.
Mike, what do you got for me?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike McCloskey, Senate District 5. So I just have a basic question. Did we not at the beginning of our convention pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America?
Hold on, you're debating. What about 4? 4?
Mr. Chairman, Christine Wismore, SD30. I would like to call the question to end debate on the constitutional issue section of the platform so we can move on to debate of the next.
Let's finish this debate. We got like a minute left.
Thank you.
Before we have to do it, if that's okay with you. Number 1.
Mr. Chairman, Rachel Horton, SD30. I stand in opposition to this amendment. I believe it causes a lot more consternation on the floor, a lot more time on debate, and it also, yes, for the reasons already presented by my fellow TEXIT supporters, we do have the right to do that, and there's nothing wrong with keeping it as a platform in our party plan. So thank you.
Okay. Interrupting motion on 4.
Okay.
By the way, the time has ended for this section. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
David Carter, SD 24. On this plank 20, the last phrase, and pass the Texas Sovereignty Act as filed in the 88th Legislature regular session as HB 384. This language was added
this isn't a proper interrupting motion.
No, it's a point of order. It's a point of order. This is not. This should
State
not
your
be
point of order
deleted
succinctly.
with the secession stuff. This is supposed to be with the nullification, the first sentence. So don't delete this phrase about the Texas.
That's not a proper point of order. Okay, we're done with the time on this section. The time has elapsed, so we're going to treat it like it was a call to question. First, we're going to vote on the amendment, and then we're going to move on. All in favor of the amendment, which eliminates the language that's crossed out in green on the screen above, are going to say aye, and everybody against eliminating that language is a nay. So all in favor of the amendment, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? The noes have it. The amendment fails. Matt, please move on to the next section. Matt, what are we on?
I just love that so much.
We could do a 1-hour play-by-play just on that segment.
Oh, well, I think everybody got the point that had the delegates been in the room during the legislative priorities situation, it might have gone very differently. But, I got to tell you, most of the comments that we've received from that video as it circulated around have noted how resoundingly their attempt to take that plank out of the platform was defeated. I mean, that's, that voice vote was just pretty decisive, I think, in the minds of most people. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. And I mean, the argument against it is weak too. I mean, it's not like here's why we shouldn't do this. Here's why this is a bad idea. It's like, well, we're tired of hearing about it being in the platform.
It's so bad. Well, long story short, to wrap up the convention part, and we'll get into some sort of final thoughts about that before we talk about what happened last night. But obviously the platform moved on. Delegates voted on it, which a lot of them were pretty furious that they got 40 minutes to bubble out 300 and something, choices or whatever.
Yeah.
But now it's in the delegates' hands, now it's no longer in the delegates' hands. Now it's in the hands of the people who are going to run the Scantrons. So when should people expect to find out what the final results of that are?
We're hearing 2 weeks from the convention. The chatter that I saw, which was not official post, but just chatter from some people who included people who serve on the SREC. They said that the original plan was to run the Scantrons at convention after voting on Friday, and to have the results available on Saturday. But due to the fact that the voting got delayed, and the RPT staff was going to take most of the week off for the holiday, that it may actually be 2 weeks to complete that process. How it goes from needing a week to run scans to from a night to run scans to a week, if you give them time, I don't understand that part. I can understand the week vacation, but I don't understand why it takes another week on top of that. But that's the word.
Wow. Okay. Well, it's I'm kind of excited to see what happens. Given some of the complaints I've heard from the delegates that were there, that were voting about the time and some of the irregularities, but look, I mean, I think everyone there heard that. I think everyone pretty well understands where the delegates sat on the issue. So the expectation is that it's going to proceed forward. Now, couple of other things took place. We had a lot of Texas First pledge signers that were in the race for party positions. Can you just sort of, everybody already knows the news that the new chair and the new vice chair are both Texas First pledge signers, but just very succinctly kind of give everybody a rundown of.
Yeah, I want to add one more little comment before that. We were talking about platform committee. Understand our planks sailed through subcommittees untouched, both pre-convention, the pre-convention subcommittee meetings. We did a little bit of testimony in favor of it. No debate in the subcommittees. No debate, to my knowledge, in the temporary committee, even for the platform. And in the permanent committee, we did do just a little bit of debate, but we had a bunch of people signed up, and we just had them all sit down to let other people talk about other issues. The one time that it was challenged, someone proposed another amendment that would have weakened it, basically said like, well, if maybe someday, maybe if we should call for a TEXIT vote, then the committee resoundingly shot that down. So this was a really important point, is that even though we face struggles on legislative priority, for the 31 members on the platform committee, and a chair who had has expressed concerns about it in the past, for it to just sail through smoothly through those is a real testament to the progress that we're making.
Fantastic. Well, go ahead.
If you want me to move on to the Texas First Pledge.
Yeah, let's talk about Texas First Pledge really quickly about the GOP convention, because we got about a little less than 15 minutes left, and I want to talk about last night's.
Yeah, so we had lots of signers. We had them sign for the SREC that we're running. There's numerous on that, but the chair and the vice chair, I think, were the most interesting races. We had, and I'm recalling from memory, I know we had 4 state chair candidates out of 5 sign. And so no surprise, Abraham George was one of those, and he won the state chair. So we're excited to have a Texas First Pledge signer that is the state chair. But we also had, I believe it was 6 of the 7 vice chairs that were running, all the
pretty
female
much
candidates.
Everybody but David Stein.
Everybody but David Stein. Yeah. So, it was quite the makeup. I think one of the frustrated thing of our folks was they were kept asking us, well, who do we pick out of this group? I said, well, the good news is you got choices, because the TNM supports anyone who signed the pledge. I said, from there, you need to look and see what actions they've taken for TEXIT. And we use some further support, and we saw that in SREC races as well. In my, as we were electing SREC committee people in my district 25, We had both of the incumbents that had signed the pledge and worked with us and did some tremendous work, and they both got replaced with a couple more people who'd also signed the. Well, actually, I take that back. One of them signed the pledge, but the other one is well on his way. So it's exciting that we have so many people up and down. Just all these party positions, all the state positions that are signing this pledge that understand that it's crucial to put the interests of Texans first and to support our right to vote on Texas independence.
Well, and that's that probably explains why I think Newsweek has done 2 news stories on the convention efforts so far, and I think there's probably another one coming too. And it's it's making the rounds. It's increasing public awareness, and for the folks out there who talk about, we need to do more to reach out to the people. Well, this is what we do. This is how you do it: is you go out and you do things and you make things happen, and people see that. We are the best communicators of our mission, our principles, and our vision. So, and I think that is a testament to what happened last night. So really briefly, for those of you, and by the way, guys, if you let me just do this because this is going to be a great opportunity to use this. Folks, if you have not downloaded the TNM mobile app, go do it. Go do it. I would say go do it right now. Like if you can multitask, because I really don't want you to leave, because we really need to celebrate the wins, right? But go download this thing and get her done, right? Okay, tnm.me/app. So last night were the primary runoffs for Republicans and Democrats, and we still had candidates in the hunt. We had SBOE candidate. We had several state rep candidates, and I got to tell you, we got 4. Interestingly enough, in one race, we actually had 2 Texas First Pledge signers that made it to the runoffs against each other, which was pretty interesting. But in overall, we got 4 candidates through the runoffs, and it appears that they're going to at least 3 of them. One's going to be in a pretty difficult district in the general, but at least 3 of them have a pretty smooth sailing path toward joining the legislature in the next session. And so, we've got Andy Hopper. You guys know Andy Hopper in House District 64. We got David Lowe, who wound up finally trouncing incumbent Stephanie Click. And excuse me, Nate. So, sorry. We had Lee Simmons, who was in the race with Samara Kunwal, who they were running against each other. And then finally, AJ Louderback, who just recently signed the Texas First Pledge. All of them defeated the challengers or the incumbents handily. The one loss that I think is pretty tough for a lot of folks is that David Covey lost his runoff against Speaker of the House Dave Phelan by less than 400 votes, right? So I want you guys that are really feeling bummed and dejected about that to let that vote disparity sink in very deeply into your brain. Less than 400 votes, and what was the difference between having Dave Phelan back in the House or having David Covey in the House, a Texas First Pledge signer? So every single bit of effort, whatever you can do, whatever it is, that little extra bit of effort, sometimes you think maybe I don't feel like it, or I got something else that's come up. This is the kind of margins when you're in the fights like we're in that you may have to play up against. Not every place is going to be like what you heard at the Republican convention with everybody screaming their heads off and being happy and having those wide margins. We're not always going to dwarf the opposition when we show up. Sometimes we may have to fight some fights that have really tight margins, but that's why you got to give it 100% from start to finish until the job gets done. And Nate, I got to say, You guys did a phenomenal job. Again, I'm saying it. You guys did a phenomenal job at convention. I want to congratulate all of our Texas First Pledge signers that got across the finish line. And look, I'm going to congratulate the ones that didn't as well, because it took courage to put your name on the line, which is dotted, to say that you will just basically support the right of the people to self-government. And unfortunately, we live in a day and age when it takes an immense amount of courage to say those things and run for office, right? To actually say, oh yeah, you know what? I'll honor the oath that I'm going to take to the Texas Constitution when I, if and when I take office. So I got to tell you, everyone across the board has done phenomenally. We haven't won every battle, but not all the battles that seem lost are even over yet, right? So Nate, I'm just so excited you got to join us. Let's take a couple of questions real quick, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Let's see what we got over here. All right.
While you're looking that up, I'll say real quick too.
Yeah,
It'll be interesting to see how much money Dade Phelan spent per vote to hold on to that seat, because he spent a wad. And understand that was not a small challenge by Covey.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, because we have to wait for the final reports to come in. But I think Jeremy Kitchen, I don't know if you guys remember him or not, but I think Jeremy has already done up to the last filing what the cost per vote was. And I know it's ridiculous. I mean, the last, by the way, I got the studio working again. So Texas News Podcast is coming back, folks. Sorry about that. Nice. But the last few episodes, a lot of times I would just grab the stack that came in the mail that day or the past few days. I mean, it was stacks of mailers this thick, Nate. I mean, it's you could have covered a house, the exterior of a house, with all of those stinking mailers. Not to mention the TV ads. Maybe my next Texas News Podcast will be about the sorry state of politicking in Texas, because some of the things these guys were called, some of the stuff that was said, some of the things are just total lies. And these people are immune because of the way the laws are written. They're immune from prosecution for that sort of stuff, because basically the moment you step out as a candidate, you become a public figure, and anyone could say anything about you, true or false, drag your name through the mud, spend $100,000 on a cable TV by pushing a lie, and there's no repercussions. And that's something that's got to stop. But I'll get off my soapbox so we can answer a question. Okay, Ralph wants to know, if the SREC had voted for the referendum, would the petition have mattered?
Good question. Absolutely. That petition carries a lot of weight. Now, from a technical standpoint, could the SREC put it on the ballot without the petition? Yes. Would the petition have mattered? Yeah, you have no idea. And look, I'll tell you this is straight from some of our top donors that gave large amounts. The people that I would expect would have been disappointed the most by the fact that we spent so much effort on the petition and they didn't honor the will of the people that signed it. But they were not disappointed, because they've seen all the additional benefits. I mean, to be able to walk into Governor Abbott's office and present him with 139,000 Texans that signed a petition calling for a referendum on independence, that adds a lot of power, not just for us, but ultimately, if he decides to do the right thing and support this issue, that's power that he needs that he would not have had if we had not done the petition. Same thing as we're talking with these folks, seeing the number of Texas First Pledge signers that we have. And, I believe that it's instrumental in the fact that we have so many people that ran for chair and vice chair that signed. They found out how many people signed this petition and how much real support there is. The only people sticking their fingers in their ears are folks like Scott Bowen and Orlando, unfortunately, who just don't want to hear how much support there is for it. But for many of the folks that were on the fence, they now know, holy mackerel, I don't believe anybody in Republican Party history has ever turned in a petition with the signatures of 139,000 Republican primary voters in Texas. I mean, that is massive. And so, yes, it's a huge piece, and we're not done with it. We're going to still keep using that tool again and again. We're going to use it with our elected officials and the folks running for office. And, we've broken it down by HD. We've broken it down by SD. We know how many people signed in each one of their districts. And so this is a tool that keeps on going. So, and it's not the first time we did the petition. I know that either. So for everybody that helped us collect signatures, both in 2023 and in previous years, your work continues to live on. Your effort continues to live on. Thank you for the work you did. And thank you for those who donated as well to get us the signatures this time.
Well said. All right. Let's take this one real quick. Terry says, how to help Paxton go to a closed convention. He's not asking for a closed convention. He's asking for closed primary. It made the rules. So obviously the Texas GOP is going to push for that legislatively, but I suspect I'm barking up the wrong tree, but I suspect a willingness on the part of the Republican Party to actually go to court over this if someone sues them and says it's a violation of Texas election code.
Yes, I think that's, I think they knew they could face legal challenges going into it. I think the hope is that the legislature will pass a bill allowing for this in the next session, which should overturn that. And, a lot of that, if I'm being honest, I think depends on who gets speaker. If Dade returns, I think he might have benefit from the primaries being open. And so it's unlikely that he would support such legislation. But if you see a change in speaker, chances are you'll probably see a change in tune to the House. But if they don't pass that through as a change to the law, I think that's one thing that the delegates and the people of the Republican Party realize, that this could result in a legal challenge, and they're prepared to defend that.
Yeah. I mean, as we've seen, the Republican Party under its previous chairman really didn't care much for the Texas election code. So, legal challenge probably in the cards there. All right, let's see if we can find, let's take, we're going to run over time, but that's okay. All right. I'll tell you what, let me take this one from email because you guys, okay, so I have to read this one. Lee asks, the Republicans voted for a vote on TEXIT at the convention. Does that direct the Texas House and Senate to vote on this, or will it be ignored by committee?
Oh man, what a great question. Yeah. Let's shoot down the middle on that one, right? It does not require the Republicans to do anything. And there is some Rule 44 censure where if you don't respect, I think it's just 3 areas of the platform they can be called out on, where they can be very formally censured for ignoring it. That said, it's very difficult to hold them to account to that, and especially to do it in a timely manner. I think we'll probably see a little more of that going around through the next year of the Republican Party. But that's really the best tool that they have, other than, legislative priority is another tool where we would have seen some more support by the party. And that's the reason why we were pushing for it. But we don't have it officially as a legislative priority. I think we're going to end up with what the delegates voted on. Was it still a platform link saying this should be a legislative priority? So that's going to be fun. But no, it's basically a Mother May I request to the House. But that said, it's our job to go to Austin to talk to these representatives or to meet them in their district offices. You don't have to go to Austin to do it. And to let them know that this was the support we had, that not only did we have 89% of delegates in the previous convention calling for it, but we'll find out the percentage for the supported here. And, we saw tremendous support at every single level within the party, and that we want to build on this. The number of Texas First Pledge signers that are moving through from the primary and the runoff is another tremendous sign that we're going to get a lot more traction than we did before, and we're going to do our best to push this all the way through. But it is ultimately up to the House. It's ultimately up to the committee. We're aware of roadblocks we've had if the committee chairs remain the same. We've been working angles this whole time. Just because the legislature let out didn't mean we stopped working on the legislature. We'll take every legal, every proper, every moral angle that we can to reach out to these folks and encourage them to do the right thing. And that's what we're doing.
Yep. That just goes to reinforce what we say all the time. When people ask us, hey, when does the next legislative session start? We always say, started on the last day of the one before. So,
Yep.
you know, it's not like any of us get to take a break, folks. Just throwing that out there. Not for sympathy, but just so you remember, this is a 24/7, 365-day fight. Okay. All right, Nate. Well, look, it's time to wrap it up. You got any parting thoughts before I kick you loose and wrap up with these fine folks?
Yeah, I'd like to do a couple more things. One, I threw this on during one of the breaks. You might have noticed this during my testimony. It blinks a little bit. It's a Texas with 3 lights on it blinking. And this is one of the neat things we were able to do kind of last minute at the convention. Well, I say last minute. It's something we were working on, but we didn't want to tip the opposition off to our plans. That was really the key there. And so we had identified something that would stand out for who was a Texas supporter. And I'll tell you what, they were a big hit. They were an excellent way. People would come to us all over. How do I get one of those? Where'd you get that from? And it gave us a chance to go right into, well, these are for TEXIT supporters. And so that did 2 things. One, most people were anxious to sign up and get one as a TEXIT supporter. But 2, it let them know that as they looked around the rooms they were in, whether they were caucus rooms or the general convention or the exhibit hall, and they saw blinking light after blinking light, when they looked around at elected officials and SREC members that were wearing these, and it put in their minds, holy moly, there is a lot of support here for TEXIT. And so that was a really cool special thing. A special thanks to the donors that gave to that. And that's really the second part that I want to say that made this happen. We had 402 different donations come in to see T&M at the GOP convention. That was a direct campaign, a direct ask. We said early on that we weren't going to give money to the party and we weren't going to have a booth there because we didn't want to support the efforts of the previous chair that denied our vote. However, we left it up to the people to decide, and our supporters said overwhelmingly, not only do we want to be at convention, which we, as Daniel mentioned earlier, we were going to be there regardless, but we're willing to put our money where our mouth is and say we want a booth, we want a presence there, we want an official presence there. And so we showed up big time. Once again, lots of compliments about our booth, lots of traffic, but we couldn't have done that without the help of those donors. And so I just want to say a tremendous thank you to everybody who was able to give, whether you gave your money or whether you gave your time, because we had lots of volunteers show up and help us out at convention too. And so it was really, really a tremendous effort. And I appreciate you all helping us put major points on the scoreboard, major victories. And trust me, we're going to keep using this to leverage exactly what we need, which is the legislature passing a bill calling for a referendum. So thank you all so much.
All right. Well, good deal. All right, Nate, I will talk to you very soon. I appreciate you jumping on here with me tonight.
All right. Have a good night.
All right. Good job, buddy. All right, folks, that is going to be a wrap for Coffee Talk. I'm so glad Nate joined tonight and got to talk about the convention and talk about what happened with our Texas First pledge signers during the runoff. You know, it's celebrate, celebrate, celebrate. Lots and lots of really, really great news. And it's always one of my favorites when I get to do Coffee Talk and jump on here with you and talk about the good news. And I'm there. So very excited. Again, I can't thank all of you that participated in all of these victories. I can't thank you enough. But it is unfortunately time for us to say goodnight. I've got to get back to work. Just a couple quick things. A reminder, I already did this, but I'm doing it again. Go download the app for those of you that have forgotten. Head over to tnm.me/app. Download the app and get connected. It is becoming our primary organizing tool. When you sign up, first off, when you pledge your support, right? When you register your support for the TNM, when you go to right there to tnm.me/vote to pledge your support, you're automatically going to get an account to our website, which gets you access to the mobile app. And you'll automatically be put in groups with other people in your county, other people in your House district, other people in your Senate district, and you have the opportunity to add yourself to other groups of people that share interests within the TNM with you, whether it's your political party affiliation or you're a homeschool family or a veteran, you're going to be able to group up and organize with those people. So definitely go over there, tnm.me/vote, and then download the app. You will be happy that you did. Also, I'm gonna just remind every one of you. Nate said something a moment ago that is super important, which is the successes that we talked about tonight were made possible. He talked about 400 and some odd individual donations, but that came from 333 donors, right? And we had, I think it was 60 volunteers sign up to help work the convention. So imagine 333 people gave something, and 60 of those people gave something. They gave their time and probably donated as well. Imagine what would happen if all of us pitched in and did some. Imagine what we could accomplish. Imagine how quickly we could get this done. So I'm just going to encourage you, head over to donate.tnm.me, or you'll see it down here at the bottom of the screen. Here's the join. Go become a member, tnm.me/join. You can donate, tnm.me/donate. They both take you to where you're supposed to go. But I would encourage you to do one or both of those if you're not already. And if there's any question, reach out to us and ask. All right, folks, that is going to be a wrap for tonight. I really do appreciate Coffee Talk. I told you I'd be back, right? It's just things. And by the way, for those of you that have been going through the storms in North Texas, you guys stay safe. I know a lot of you're probably not watching. If you watch this on the replay, I know you've been without power. Living down here in Hurricane Alley, I know how rough that can be. Don't hesitate to reach out if you need some assistance or need some help. Okay. All right, folks. Well, with that, we're going to call it a wrap. So, yeah, appreciate you all 100%. I got to get back to work. And so I'll leave you with the words I leave you with every time we're together. They're not my words. They're the words of Sam Houston when he said that Texas will again lift its head and stand among the nations. I believe that time is now. And the question is, will you stand with her? Good night, everyone.